The door is 12 feet away. Solid mahogany. 2 agents flanking it. The faint sound of voices behind it. The president's voice, low and deliberate, the way it always sounds when he's already made up his mind about something and is waiting for someone to confirm it. That someone is you. Your name badge says Chief of Staff. 3 words. People in this building have gone their entire careers without those 3 words. Some of them bled for decades, worked every thankless committee, survived every purge, outlasted every scandal, and still never stood where you're standing right now. You're standing 12 feet from the Oval Office with a briefing document in your hand and a decision in your chest that no briefing document can make for you. Take a breath. The air in the West Wing has its own texture. Cold and recycled. It smells faintly of printer ink, old coffee, and something you can only describe as consequence. Every corridor carries it. The carpet is thick enough to swallow sound, and it does. Footsteps vanish, voices soften, and what's left is a silence that makes everything feel permanent. You've been in this building for 11 months. You've been in this role for 6 weeks. 6 weeks of 4 a.m. wake-up calls. 6 weeks of standing in the middle of 17 conversations at once, holding the thread of all of them, dropping none. 6 weeks of reading the president's face across a table the way a sailor reads weather, looking for the shift, the change, the thing behind the thing he says. 6 weeks of learning that power at this level doesn't feel like power. Feels like a hallway you can never leave. If you've never seen this series before, you're watching your life as every rank in the White House staff. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the ranks below this one. They're darker than you'd think. The agent nearest the door tilts his chin at you. A micro gesture. They're ready for you. You tuck the briefing document under your arm. You straighten your jacket. And you think, not for the first time, not for the last, that the most dangerous thing in this building is not the president, not the press, not the political opposition gathering outside these walls. The most dangerous thing in this building is the next word out of your mouth. You reach for the door. Inside the Oval Office, everything is smaller than it looks on television and more enormous than any room you've ever stood in. The president is at his desk. He doesn't look up when you enter. That's not dismissal. You understand that now. That's the economy of a man who has learned to ration attention like water in a drought. He's reading. His pen is moving. The seal of the United States is embedded in the floor beneath your feet and you feel it, not metaphorically, physically, the solidity of something older than both of you pressing up through your soles. Close the door, he says. You do. He looks up. Here is what no one tells you about being the Chief of Staff. Your entire day is determined by that look. Not the words, the look. Because the words are always controlled, always measured, always calibrated for whoever might be listening, whoever might be 3 feet outside that door with an ear and an agenda. The look is the truth. And right now the look says, I need you to fix something before it becomes unfixable. You sit. He slides a folder across the desk without ceremony. You open it. 3 pages. A policy initiative his top advisors have spent 4 months building. You read the first page in 11 seconds. You've trained yourself to read like this, the same way surgeons train themselves to cut without hesitation, and by the second page your stomach has already registered the problem. There's a fracture in this plan. Not visible from the surface. You have to know where to look. But it's there, running through the foundation like a crack in a wall that hasn't collapsed yet. He's watching you read. Well, he says. You set the folder down. And here is the weight of the keys, the thing they don't put in the job description. You are not just managing logistics. You are managing reality. His reality. The administration's reality. The version of events that 60 million people will read tomorrow morning in their feeds over their coffee, forming opinions that will calcify into votes. You are the person who decides what story this becomes. You clear your throat. There's something you need to hear, you say. The room gets quieter. He doesn't like what you're telling him. You can see it in the set of his jaw. The way his fingers stop moving. The way the pen, the expensive one, the one that came with a letter from a foreign head of state, gets placed very deliberately on the desk. Walk me through it, he says. So you do. The policy looks airtight on paper. Bipartisan appeal. Strong economic projection. The kind of initiative that gets framed and hung in the halls of legacy. But there's a clause, buried in Section 4, Paragraph 9, language so technical it reads like it was designed to avoid being read, that would hand an opposition senator the procedural lever to stall the entire package for 14 months. 14 months. You watch the president's face absorb this. Who drafted Section 4? He asks. You give him the name. A beat. How long have you known about this? He asks. Since this morning, you say. 40 minutes before this meeting. He studies you. That's the other thing about this job, You are studied constantly. Not by cameras, not by journalists. By the man in this room who has spent decades reading people the way linguists read ancient texts, finding meaning in every pause, every glance away, every breath held a half-second too long. And your recommendation? He says. You've been turning this over since the moment you found it. You've run 3 versions of the outcome in your head, the version where you kill the clause quietly, the version where you confront the drafter directly, and the version where you let the policy go forward and manage the fallout when it hits. None of them are clean. All of them cost something. This is the thing about the crack in the plan. The crack is never really about the plan. It's always about the person who put it there. And why? I think we have a problem inside the building, you say carefully. The president's eyes don't move from yours. How big? He asks. You pick up the folder. You turn to page 3. You point to the name at the bottom of the document, the secondary signature, the one no one was supposed to notice. You say nothing. You let him read it. The Roosevelt Room. 14 people around the table. 12 of them trying to look calm. 2 of them actually calm, and those 2 are the most dangerous people in the building. You know them all by their tells. The deputy chief clutches his pen like a weapon when he's nervous, barrel down, knuckles white, a man bracing for impact. The communications director blinks too slow when she's calculating, like a computer processing in real time. The national security advisor keeps his coffee cup exactly 3 inches from the edge of the table. Always 3 inches. You noticed this in week 2. You never mentioned it. You study people the way this job requires you to study them. Relentlessly, quietly, and without mercy. Today's agenda is an alliance-building session. That's the official language. What it actually is a room full of people trying to figure out who else in the room is already planning their next move. You open the meeting. You watch the deputy chief's pen. Midway through the 3rd agenda item, he glances at the communications director. One glance. Fast. The kind of glance that means they've already spoken privately about this item and have already decided what the position is going to be before anyone at this table was consulted. File it away. You keep talking. After the meeting, one of the junior advisors lingers. His name is Marcus Webb. 29 years old. Georgetown Law. The kind of young that still believes if you work harder than everyone else, the institution rewards you for it. He waits until the room empties. There's something you should know, he says quietly. You wait. Someone talked to a journalist last night. Off the record. About the policy. Your face does not change. This is a skill you have spent 11 months acquiring, and it is not natural. It is constructed, maintained daily like a wall that has to be rebuilt every morning. Which journalist? You ask. He tells you. You feel something move through you, not panic, the thing beneath panic, the cold precursor, but you hold it. Thank you, Marcus, you say. He nods and leaves. You stand alone in the Roosevelt Room. And you understand that the problem isn't outside this building. It never was. The press briefing room smells like ambition and bad lighting. 37 journalists. Cameras. A forest of microphones arranged on the podium like a throat that can swallow you whole if you say the wrong thing. This isn't your briefing. The press secretary handles the daily engagements. But today the story is too close to the machinery you control, and the president asked you to take the room. We're about halfway through, and this is where the real machinery starts breaking down. If this series is hitting different for you, share this with one person who needs to understand how power actually works. Now back to the room. You step up. The first 4 questions are procedural. You handle them the way you handle everything. In complete sentences with controlled eye contact, giving them exactly enough to feel satisfied and not one syllable more. Then a journalist in the 3rd row, Sarah Okonkwo, The Atlantic, hair pulled back, notebook open, pen already moving, raises her hand. Can you speak to reports of dissent within the West Wing on the policy package? She asks. The room stills. 27 cameras adjust. This is the question. Not because it's the most difficult. Because it's the most accurate. Sarah Okonkwo has been covering this building for 9 years, and she doesn't ask questions she doesn't already have partial answers to. You hold her gaze. Here is what you've learned about truth at this altitude. It is not binary. It is not simply the thing you say or don't say. It is the weight you assign to words. The order in which you arrange them. The way you lean into one syllable and let another fall quiet. What I can tell you, you say carefully, is that this administration conducts vigorous internal debate. That's not a flaw in the process. That is the process. She writes something. A follow-up, she says. Are there individuals within the administration whose loyalty to the president's agenda is currently in question? You smile. Not because it's funny. Because you've learned that a smile held precisely long enough, buys 3 seconds. 3 seconds in this room is an eternity. This administration is unified behind the president's vision, you say. You gather your notes. You walk out. Your hands are not shaking. That is not the same as them being still. It's 9:47 p.m. Your office. The lamp is on. The city is a smear of light through the window. You haven't eaten since morning, not because you forgot but because hunger stopped registering around month 3 and never came back. Your phone rings. The caller ID reads a name you trusted. You answer. "I need to meet with you," the voice says. It's the deputy chief. His tone is flat in a way that is not calm. It is the flatness of something that has made a decision and is now informing you of it. Tonight. Not in the building. You are quiet. Is this about the journalist? You ask. Pause. It's about several things, he says. He ends the call. You set the phone down on your desk. Here is the thing about betrayal at this level, it never looks like a knife. It looks like loyalty for long enough that you stop watching the hand. The deputy chief has been in your corner for 11 months. He was in your corner when the role was offered and you had doubts. He was in your corner when the first policy fight went sideways and the president's team looked for someone to hold responsible. He said the right things. He was in every room. And now you think back, methodically, the way you think about everything, and you begin to reconstruct the architecture of the past 6 weeks. Who was in which room? Who had access to the policy document? Who had the specific combination of relationship and motive to take a paragraph from a private briefing and move it, quietly, without fingerprints, to a journalist's notebook? The phone sits on the desk. You don't move for a full minute. When you were 12 years old, your father told you something that you have carried in the back of your mind like a stone in a pocket. The most dangerous person is the one who smiles at the table and then excuses themselves from the room. You think about the Roosevelt room. You think about the glance. Deputy Chief. Communications Director. One look. Half a second. You pick up the phone. You call Marcus Webb. Clear my morning, you say. I need 3 hours with no interruptions and no record. By morning the story has broken. Not the story you feared, not the policy fracture, not the leak. Something adjacent. Something that reads like a warning shot. 3 paragraphs in a political newsletter with a modest readership, but picked up by 2 aggregators, and now sitting in the notifications of 11 million phones. The headline, sources inside the West Wing describe fractured trust, at the top. Your phone has rung 14 times before 6 a.m. You don't answer any of them. You stand in your apartment. Your real one, the one that exists outside the building, the one with a plant you keep forgetting to water and a bookshelf you haven't touched in months, and you read the 3 paragraphs 3 times. Whoever wrote this knows something. Not everything. Not yet. But enough to signal that they are building towards something, and that the 3 paragraphs are not the story, they are the announcement that a story is coming. You shower. You dress. You drive in. At 7:15 you're in your office. At 7:22 the president calls. I've seen it, he says. Yes, sir. Is it accurate? He asks. And here, right here, is the hinge. The door on which everything swings. Because the accurate answer and the strategic answer are not the same answer, and the president is asking you both questions with one sentence the way he always does, and you have about 4 seconds to determine which answer he actually needs. It reflects a version of events, you say. Silence. Clean it up, he says. He hangs up. You sit in your chair. Clean it up. 3 words. The simplicity of the instruction is its brutality. What it means is, find the source, neutralize the narrative, protect the administration, and do all 3 before this becomes the story that defines a term. Do it quietly. Do it quickly. Do it in a way that leaves no fingerprints that can later be turned into a congressional hearing. You have been given the most powerful instruction in Washington. Fix it. And somewhere in this building, the person who broke it is already watching to see how you respond. The national security briefing comes at 11 a.m. You were not expecting it. The NSA director enters your office with 2 members of his team and a folder that has a classification level you are not going to describe in this room and closes the door behind him. His face has the specific quality of a man who has delivered bad news enough times to have developed an efficiency about it. We have a situation, he says. He opens the folder. You read. It takes 45 seconds. When you look up, the room has changed. Not physically. But it has changed the way a room changes when everything you knew to be true about it is reclassified. The situation is not a political crisis. It is a security crisis. A real one. The kind that doesn't resolve itself with messaging strategy or alliance management or 3 careful paragraphs managed into the news cycle. The kind that requires a decision. A specific decision. One that will either contain the situation or, if chosen wrong, expand it in ways that cannot be contained after. You think of the breadcrumb Marcus Webb gave you. You think of the policy fracture. You think of the leak. And now you are sitting inside a security crisis that may not be separate from any of those things. It may be connected. One thread. One hand. What does the president know, you ask? He's being briefed now, the NSA director says. He wants you in the situation room in 20 minutes. You stand. Your legs are solid. You make sure of that before you trust them. The decision he'll be asked to make, you say carefully. How many people does it affect? The NSA director looks at you with the exact expression of a man who wishes he were answering a different question. Domestically, he says. Tens of thousands minimum. You nod once. You pick up your jacket. You think about the door again. The mahogany one. The 12 feet. You think about the first morning you stood in front of it, believing that the most dangerous thing you'd face was a wrong word. You walk down the hallway. You were not wrong. You were just early. The situation room is underground. Everything about it is designed to concentrate reality. Low ceilings. One long table. Screens on every wall, each one showing a different version of the same crisis from a different angle. The people around this table are the people whose names appear in history books. You have read about predecessors in this room, about decisions made in rooms like this, and you understood them abstractly the way you understand cold weather from inside a building. You are no longer inside the building. The president sits at the head of the table. He has been briefed. He is looking at you. Not at the NSA director. Not at the Secretary of Defense. Not at the Joint Chiefs. At you. Because this is the arrangement you've built over 6 weeks and 11 months and 1,000 small moments of earned trust. When the room is full, he looks at you last, and whatever he finds in your face is what determines the weight he gives to everything else he's heard. You look back at him. The decision on the table is this: a preemptive containment action. Will work. The intelligence is strong. But it involves a restriction that will affect American citizens, their movement, their communications, a temporary suspension of something they have taken for granted since before they were born. Legal. Precedent. Necessary. And irreversible once executed. Because the moment you do it, the information environment around it shifts, and you cannot unshift it. The room is waiting. Your read, the president says. You think of the deputy chief in the glance. You think of Marcus Webb in the empty Roosevelt room. You think of your father's voice. The most dangerous person is the one who smiles and then excuses themselves. Someone at this table is connected to the leak. But you are out of time to determine who. Do it, you say. Your voice is flat. Present. Certain. The president nods once. And the order goes out. And you have just crossed the line you knew was coming, the one you saw from a distance 11 months ago and told yourself you would handle differently when you got here. You handled it exactly the way this room requires. Your office. Midnight. The plant is still dying. You haven't watered it in 6 weeks and it's been telling you this in the only language a plant has, slowly, without drama, leaf by leaf. You sit in the chair. The building is quiet in a way it almost never is. The halls have emptied. The screens are dark. Somewhere 2 floors up, a skeleton crew is monitoring the overnight news cycle, watching for the story, managing whatever version of reality is about to surface by morning. You have done what was necessary. That phrase has a particular sound in an empty room. You let yourself feel it, the full weight of the past 24 hours pressing down on your sternum like a hand that will not lift. The journalist. The leak. The deputy chief's flat voice on the phone. The NSA director's folder. The president's eyes across the situation room table. The order. You think about a man named Marcus Webb, 29 years old, Georgetown Law, still believes in the institution. You think about what this job will do to that belief over time. Whether it will survive him or whether he will survive it. You think about the deputy chief. He submitted his resignation at 10 p.m. You accepted it in 3 words via email. No meeting. No conversation. This is what the end of a professional relationship looks like at this altitude. 3 words and a timestamp. You think about the president. He thanked you tonight. Briefly. Genuinely. In the way he thanks people when he means it. No eye contact, just a hand briefly on your shoulder as he left the situation room, the weight of it saying what the words didn't. You held it. You held the weight of the agenda, the weight of the crisis, the weight of the alliances, the weight of the decisions, the weight of the story this administration tells the world about itself. You held all of it. And the cost is this. You are sitting alone in your office at midnight, and you are not sure when you last had a conversation that had nothing to do with any of this. You are the chief of staff. You hold the flow of the most powerful office on earth. You have the president's ear and the nation's machinery in your hands. And you are completely, efficiently, totally alone. If this story hit you differently than you expected, share it. Not for the algorithm. Because someone in your life needs to understand what power at the top actually costs. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is a whole series. Every rank. Every life. You haven't seen the ones below this yet. You are the chief of staff. You have access to every room. Every document. Every decision before it becomes history. You have the president's trust. The real kind, the kind earned in crisis, not ceremony. You have survived the leak, the betrayal, the breaking point. You have what every ambitious person in this city wants. And what no one sees. You have become so efficient at holding the world together that there is no longer any part of you left over for anything else. You did what was necessary. But necessary and right are not always the same word. And somewhere between the policy documents and the midnight orders and the irreversible calls, you stopped asking whether they were. That's not weakness. That's what this job costs. Everyone who takes this chair pays it. The question no one asks you, the question you haven't asked yourself in 11 months, is this. What are you going to do when there's nothing left to hold? You didn't just run the White House. You let it run through you. And what came out the other side, you're still deciding if that person is someone you recognize.